So I've started sharing a screen here, and this will be a slightly condensed agenda. First of all, just a quick introduction. So my name is Paul Stas. I'm the head of sales here at Strongpoint. Happy to be walking through this with you today. So we'll start off by talking a bit about kind of what is documentation, and that really does mean different things for different organizations or even just for different people. I'll then talk about kind of how Strongpoint works, what we do, how you actually kind of execute on this, the form that our product takes, and then I'll jump into a quick product demonstration, and we'll make sure to save some time for some questions at the end, or at least we hoped to, until we started about 8 minutes late on you. So without further ado, I'll get rolling. So what is documentation? Right, ultimately, we think of it as being a single source of truth around system setup, configuration, dependencies, usage, as well as an ongoing record of changes that are being made inside your system. So, not only, it's a little bit different from just like a code repository, for example, and it's also a little bit different from just like a snapshot tool, because this does need to be a live and kind of evergreen document, because changes are taking place all the time. So that's kind of at a high level what we think about it. And I think everybody would agree that it's a really critical set of tools. But a lot of people don't have it, or it takes different forms. So first of all, kind of why should you have it? Ultimately, we like to break it down into a few different groups. There's definitely kind of productivity enhancements that come from it, but it also just helps mitigate risk, improves overall communication, and helps those that are subject to it prep for audit. You need to have a full understanding of what's in your system and have visibility to a full and accurate set of changes that have taken place within a given period. And that's kind of the reasons why. So, there's a number of factors that I think, really make it even more critical. Maybe you're going through a new implementation, or maybe you've gone through a couple implementations or an implementation of a new major project. Turnover inside the organization. I know that a lot of companies are feeling that a little bit right now, where maybe there's a series of temporary or non-temporary layoffs, and as those people went walking out the doors, so too did your kind of tribal knowledge of what's inside the system and how it all works. Again, thinking of big projects or for preparing for audit. These are areas, we've had one customer specifically that said that we saved them more than 75% of their audit prep time. This is like a public company that was subject to SOX. How do people maintain it? There's a variety of ways that we hear. Spreadsheets. There's one person that sticks out to me. And he's now moved on to a different organization, but he had by far the best spreadsheet of system documentation that I have ever seen. Like, this thing was just massive and put a ton of work into it. And it was robust, but the challenge was, as good as it was, you had no way of knowing if it was right. And so there was always this skepticism, and this document was perfect, but nobody believed it for sure. And I think that's a really big gap. We have customers who previously were using Google Sites, capturing it all in a web form so that it's accessible to a variety of different people. Same issue though, right? Where, how you can't really trust it completely. It's subject to human error. Maybe something gets missed. People make mistakes all the time. So there's that. We have a friend of ours who's a pretty well-known figure inside the Salesforce ecosystem. And he's seen people, and he talks about this, custom objects. So they've actually built custom objects to help track configuration changes and things like that. Definitely one positive is that it's at least on the platform, it's native. But again, it's human error. It's also time consuming. We've seen people build tools for manual documentation and impact analysis, and it's pretty technical stuff. Like, we've got a team of developers that does it, so we can definitely speak to that. And then finally, how do you maintain it? Well, our recommendation, and this is going to segue into the demo, is automatically. That's probably the best way to do it. It's great to have a team of subject matter experts building a tool for you that automatically does all of this stuff for you. So next thing I want to talk about quickly is kind of how Strongpoint works. So we're a managed package installed inside your Salesforce environment, maybe taking you 15, 20, or 30 minutes at the most, a few clicks, and that'll launch our tool. And over the next couple days in the background, what we'll do is automatically index all of your customizations and automatically map out all of the dependencies between them. And so now you do have that single source of truth, that repository for everything that's been built inside your system. And with Strongpoint installed, it's going to continue updating for you automatically on an ongoing basis. So one of the questions that we sometimes hear or that we talk about internally is, you know, if you've got a data dictionary, what good does it do you if it sits on a shelf? And so we've tried to put together a number of different ways to really help you use this information quickly and efficiently to help manage your orgs more effectively. I'll walk you through a couple of those today. I'll probably allude to some of our other capabilities in kind of change management and governance type topics, but I'll focus as much as possible just on system documentation. So the first one that we always talk about, most common, would be our dependency relationship diagram. So if you click on this, what this will allow you to do is to get access to a visual representation of your documentation at an object level and see dependencies at multiple different levels down. So for example, if I come in here, I can select any object, but I'll select the account object, at the top of the list. And what Strongpoint's giving me here is a breakdown of everything that sits on my account object. And from here now I can click through. So let's say I want to investigate a potential change to this company's social media field. I can see that this is a multi-pick list. It's owned by Sasha. I've got the API name and a date last used. And Strongpoint's going to branch out and show me where else inside my system that's currently being used. So here, this is a pretty simple picture. I've got a few different layouts, a report and a list view, but nothing else, right? There's not a lot of risk here. If I'm going to make a change, I can do this quickly and simply. There's no automation that I really need to be too concerned with. Different example for you, this maintenance type pick list. So at the surface, it's identical. It's also a multi-pick list. It's also sitting on the account object, different owner and a different date last used. But I'm also now seeing that in addition to layouts, got a number of reports. I've got an Apex class. I've got an approval process and a couple workflow rules. And one thing that I think is really useful here, and this is where we go kind of above and beyond of the typical where is this used type functionality, is that you can also click down and look at these downstream as well, right? So are there any other layers of dependencies that we need to be aware of here? We can do that all in this view. Or what you can do is open up the records that we have linked here. So what this is going to do is take us to a custom record where Strongpoint has created this for all of the components in your system, and we've stored what we think is all of the critical information that you'd need to know. So showing you dependencies here as well, giving you a view to that DRD that I showed you earlier. This metadata subtab here is going to show you things like the date last used, the data type, the person who originally created it, the person who last modified it, and that last modified date. In more information about date last used, such as the date last used of dependencies. For example, if something is not currently being used, but it's being used frequently by dependencies or recently by dependencies, then you can't easily just delete it because it hasn't itself been used recently or populated, for example. We're also giving you usage rates and other characteristics like that. So out of everywhere that this appears, how frequently is it actually populated? So a good kind of one-stop shop for an overview of metadata like that. We also have captured the raw data here, so we're just exporting XML for this example, but there would be different types of information depending on the other types that we were looking at. And then one of the important things about documentation, like we said, is that it's kind of evergreen and it's providing you with records of changes that have taken place. It's not just a snapshot. And so what Strongpoint's doing here is also capturing time-stamped, date-stamped change logs over time. I'll show you one of these. So we go kind of significantly beyond just what you get in the audit log here. So you've got the change date, the person that made the change, the person who originally created the customization, and then we've got a a breakdown or a diff summary here of what the new values are and what the old values are of this particular customization, as well as a side-by-side comparison. So I think the beauty of all of this is that it's native and it happens automatically. So we're capturing these change logs regardless of how these changes are made or deployed, even if you're using other tools to do them. You know, really great way to kind of be monitoring things in the background. So what I've shown you so far is really just a summary of the underlying customization records that we've created, as well as the DRD tool. But we do also have other ways for you to access that. It's one of the most common ones is our Finder tool, giving you the ability to search for things. So if I just wanted to look for that maintenance type pick list, I can type that in this way if I needed to. And there's some other filters and options. So for example, I can choose to include components from other packages. I can look for just a specific group of customization types, or I can filter by who's created them, or when they were created, or when they were last modified after. So let's say you needed to look for a group of customizations that have been modified within a specific time period, then this would be a way for you to do that. Okay, so that's one way. Another really common format that people use to review documentation is in reports. So because this is all native, you'll all be already familiar with this kind of functionality, how you can customize this. And so in this example, what I'm providing you here is I've filtered by our account object again as the base record. So this is showing me basically the same thing that was in that DRD that I showed you earlier, but rather than needing to click through and visually see it in a format that isn't exportable at all or editable, you can view it like that here. So I've got all of the customizations that are sitting on the account object, and then some of the columns here that we have are like date last used, last modified by, the data sources, the scripts, the extended types, the workflows, any reports and searches. So we've captured all of the dependencies for you. And you know, you can edit this to meet your specific requirements. It's super common that we have customers come to us, or partners come to us when they're working on, you know, large projects for business critical objects. You know, we have one that has a project object for their internal project management and work with their customers, and it's a beast. So much so that they now have their project object and their project object 2 because they ran out of fields on it. And so for them, if they're ever looking at cleanup and consolidation of those kinds of things, this is a great way to get visibility to configuration customization in a very large scale, right? There's a lot of information that can be contained in these, especially if you start building out and customizing these columns to meet your specific requirements. So there's a variety of ways that you can look at tools just like that. Now, there's a few things that come with documentation. Again, getting back to this analogy of if I've got a dictionary, what's the use of it if it just sits on my shelf, right? So you can leverage this information to do cleanup, for example. So we have a variety of pre-built cleanup reports helping you identify, you know, based on everything that we've captured and based on all the date last used and things like that and dependencies, well, what are some unused fields that haven't been used in a long time and don't have complex dependencies, right? That's an example of low-lying fruit for cleanup. What about things like empty help text fields or empty description fields that maybe should be populated, and an easy tool to help you identify all of those and populate them as you go. Or we also have, and this is a pretty popular one, we have an automated report cleanup tool. So since we know all of the old reports that you have, let's give you a tool to clean them up. So with this, you can build out a series of filters or rules, such as any report that hasn't been used in more than 25 months and doesn't have complex dependencies and doesn't belong to this group of people, automatically archive it. And we will give you the option to send a notification to the owner. And if they don't opt out, you can go ahead and get rid of it. But because our documentation was there, we will still keep track of the fact that it was there and what its configuration was. All right, so variety of kind of projects there. Another really popular one is that we've got what we call our export object tool. So this is a way for you to analyze profiles, permission sets, and user level access to various objects across the organization. So for example, you can select your account object, you can select some profiles or permission sets, select the different types of settings that you want to export. And then what we can do for you is export out an Excel file that breaks down field by field the level of access that your various different profile or permission sets have, right? We've got all of this information. It's all inside Salesforce. There's so much that you can actually do with it. We've done our best to identify some low-hanging fruit for you here, but definitely a lot more. Another really popular topic of conversation is, well, what about things like change management and impact analysis? And so you can do manual impact analysis with these tools by looking at sheets like this, right? Or what you can do is do it in a little bit more of a automated way by using our change request or change management functionality. So for example, you can say, I want to look at these two pick lists on the account object that we looked at earlier. Instead of needing to manually navigate through them, we can automatically do an impact analysis for you and show you, oops, keep right clicking instead. It can show you that these two pick lists can't be safely deleted or modified, give you these warnings why, and give you a list of customizations that could be impacted. So whether you actually want to use change requests and approvals or not, this is a great way for you to go through and kind of quickly do impact analysis and help with things like backlog prioritization. So really good set of tools. And this is really all about leveling the playing field, giving good access to tools to more people so that more people can come to these kinds of decisions. A few more things just about the tool set here for those that are new to it. Change controls, deployment and rollback, environment comparison, everything you're seeing on the change request here with respect to the change level required and the impact analysis can all be done directly inside tools like JIRA and ServiceNow. I'm happy to talk through them with you in more detail. So I'll kind of summarize this for you. We're a managed package, installed easily, automatically captures all of your customizations and all of their dependencies, tracks relevant usage information that you would need to know in order to make a good decision about whether or not you can make a change. So what does this do? All by itself, absolutely nothing. But if you are spending time trying to do these things right now, then you can stop and you can add this and you can save all of that time. And you can know that it's going to be more accurate and it's always up to date. And then if you start leveraging these tools, if you start doing the research and the impact analysis and the reporting and the change management stuff, then you're going to dramatically change your ability to manage your org effectively. You're going to be saving time, you're going to be able to do more work in less time with less risk because you've got a better understanding of what you're doing. If you work for a larger organization that does need formal change management and governance in place, like if you're subject to SOX or if you're operating in life sciences or biotech or something like that, then there's also just a tremendous amount of time savings available by incorporating these tools into your existing processes. So if you're already using JIRA, for example, think of what JIRA would look like if it had an impact analysis inside it as well, right? It can really help. So that's kind of the end. I condensed that a little bit. For those that came in late, or that came back in after we were late is probably a better way to say that. Apologies again for keeping you guys waiting for 7 or 8 minutes there. We just had some technical issues on our side. But I hope that we were still able to deliver some value in 20 minutes for you. I'm happy to sit here and chat though, so I don't have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour here. If there's any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. Or if you want to put them in the chat, that works well too. I'm happy to show you kind of some of the other capabilities that maybe I only covered briefly if you have any questions. So thank you again for all taking the time, and sincere apologies for leaving you hanging. But I'll sit tight and see if there's any questions, but if there's not, then you can feel free to drop. I have one question coming in. What is the owner of a field is the question. So it's like the person who created it and whose name it is currently in. That's how I would answer that question, at least, unless I'm misunderstanding the question. So yeah, it's the original creator of it. And then a subsequent question there. So wouldn't this be the last modified? So, so we track the person that originally created it and then also the person that modified it, because they could be different people. And again, this is slightly different than what you would get natively with Salesforce, but so you can have the current owner of it as well as the person that originally created it. But you may want to know both of those things. I've got a question about JIRA, so that's a great question. I'll pull it up for you. So I'm going to pause my share here and I'll walk you through a quick example of JIRA. So the idea behind it is that organizations depend on JIRA for their change management, and as much as possible, we don't want you to have to change those processes. If you already have a team using it, why go in and create a second change request, right? And so what I will do here briefly is show you what this looks like. So I'm just going to show you a JIRA change request first. So we have a very kind of vanilla demo environment here set up. And so let's say I come in here and as a summary, I say test for webinar, and then here in description of change. So I'm going to create a new JIRA issue. Your system would look slightly different than this. Like I said, ours is just very vanilla here. But now what's going to be different is that you'll get access to this Strongpoint for Salesforce tab here. So what I can do is inside my JIRA issue, I can select it, I can come over here, and I can say put into scope those two components that I was showing you earlier on the account object. So I can look at the company social media field, and I can look at the maintenance type field. I can select both of those, view some additional information here if I need to. And so now, rather than just having like a user story where I'm documenting requirements, I can actually take an extra step and I can populate the specific components or customizations that are going to be in scope for change. And when I hit push here, what that's going to do is automatically create a change request inside Strongpoint. And then what Strongpoint's going to do is take these two customizations and run them through our documentation engine. And it's going to understand dependencies and usage. And then you'll have some basic controls that we set up in the background that specify kind of, the level of risk involved. And so we'll tell you, hey, this needs a full software development lifecycle, or this needs sandbox testing, or whatever the case may be. And so then what you can get directly inside JIRA is that impact analysis that I showed you earlier, where we can show you if things can be safely deleted or modified or not. So I'm linked to a different account. So there's a big long list of customizations here that could be impacted, but we're showing you dependent scripts and workflows and reports and list views for all of them here. And then what we can also do is show you the DRD. So in one spot, I can now be looking at, okay, well, what kind of dependencies do these things have? And I can be doing all of this planning and analysis directly inside JIRA. And so now what's great, and just bear with me, I'm gonna log into a different environment on another screen here, and then drag a window over. So I've got a different environment up now. So what's great is that the change request will be automatically created inside Strongpoint. So here I can see that I've already got this test for webinar that I just completed for you. And I can open it up and I'm going to see the maintenance type and social media fields, and I can see the impact analysis and all that kind of stuff. And any information that I've populated inside the JIRA ticket is going to be listed here as well. But what's also really important is that I'm showing the external change request number. So now you've got a change request inside Salesforce, a Strongpoint change request inside Salesforce that's referencing your JIRA ticket that it came from originally. And then when you go off and you actually make changes to these things, What we do is automatically capture those change logs that I showed you earlier, but those change logs will reference the change request and will reference the originating JIRA ticket. So if I come into the related lists here, I can see here that I've got like my related change requests listed for my change logs. And if you get an approval inside JIRA, then that'll automatically update the status of the Strongpoint change request to approved as well. And then when we deploy, we say, hey, great, this change happened. I captured a change log. We needed a change request, but I found one. And it was linked to JIRA ticket number 123. So we're automating that reconciliation for you. So you always have visibility to, okay, why was this done? And we have some customers who use JIRA extensively. Every change that happens in production has to have a JIRA ticket associated with it. And so for them, they no longer need the audit log. They use our change logs because they all reference back to those originating JIRA tickets. And it also gives them great reporting capabilities. So if I come back here and I go into our reports, for example, I can look at like a what changed report, which shows me all of the change logs that took place within a given period, and they're time-stamped, date-stamped records of kind of what's been done, a summary of, you know, the diff of what happened, and then it's linking to the change requests numbers that exist inside the system. So if they don't have a JIRA change request associated with it, they would immediately know it here. You can even build in other tools to help you view this differently if you need to, again, because it's all native to Salesforce. So one of the questions was, in addition to just JIRA, so I hope that gives you an overview of the JIRA functionality. If you're using JIRA, we integrate with it. If you're not using JIRA and you're looking for a ticketing system, then you can use this all natively inside Salesforce. And what you're doing, just to reiterate it, because I know there was a second question about this directly, you'd be providing an overview of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to change and what the proposed customizations are and so on and so forth. And then you'd come into the system, you'd actually be selecting the different customizations that are going to be in scope for this particular ticket. You know, the sales ops manager has requested that we do the following things. And so you'd go through and you'd be able to like select them and add them into scope here. I'm just randomly picking a couple. I don't know what it's going to give me. Right, and so then once you've got those things in scope and you hit save, then your Strongpoint change request will automatically perform impact analysis for you against those items. So I've now got a longer list of customizations here. I'm being told that I need sandbox development and testing, and that's based on some policies in the background. I can walk you through those if you'd like. Let me know in the chat. But we're showing you in the impact analysis if any of them can be safely deleted or modified, or if they can't, like that. And then you can track your approvals all natively inside Salesforce, and you've always got a record of the change request that was created and who created it and who approved it and so on and so forth. Okay. Why would you use this? I think that if you're looking to mature your change management processes, this is a great way to do it. If you're looking to streamline deployment, this is also a great way to do it. We do have deployment tools, so I'll go to a different change request that's already approved here. So once a change request is approved, it would then allow you to deploy. So you can see a different view here. This is approved. I've got a button up here to deploy. I can log into my source environment, log into my target environment, confirm that yes, these are the things I want to deploy, and it would automatically send it for you, and you can roll it back if required. So that's another really good reason, is if you're just looking to help automate deployment, this is a good place to start as well. To wrap up, so the topic today was really about system documentation. I've talked a lot about how it can be used, but we do have kind of some core functionality there that can help just about anybody. Right now we have a documentation and optimization product that's, on an annual license, but in the next week or two, we're releasing a kind of a more entry-level version of that same tool. We're offering up free trials for it. So if you're interested in learning more about that, we'd be happy to have you do a sandbox install with us in the coming weeks. So feel free to reach out, let us know. We will send out a follow-up marketing email with a summary of kind of what we talked about, a link to the recording of this as well. Okay, so unless there's any other questions, we'll call it an end for today. We really do appreciate you guys coming by. Can we have a sample environment was a question. Yeah, we could get you a scratch org. if that's what you're asking. We can set you up with that just so that you can like play around with it in an environment that is not your own. That's definitely something that we can help with. Yeah, so I'll make note of your name there, David. And yeah, we can do that. Okay, so thanks everyone. I really appreciate your time. And again, apologies for being late. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon.